An empty floor at 11:58 p.m. One desk still lit under a humming fluorescent tube. A phone glows face up beside the keyboard. Subject line: a fork in the road. Fingers rest on the keys, not typing. A voice crackles through the speaker, a colleague 3 cubicles over, whispering into her own phone. 2 minutes. The button locks at midnight. A second notification stacks on the first. 3,741 replies logged since 4 p.m. The badge clipped to the monitor still says third shift, laminate curling at one corner. The cursor slides onto YES. It stops there, hovering. Down the hall, a copier finishes a job nobody started. The voice says, one more thing. They're not asking if you're loyal. They're asking if you'll notice. Tuesday, 9004A. AMC. Coffee still steaming, calendar still open. A folder slides across the table before he can sit down. The man delivering it is 31, younger than Eli's own marriage. 11 years condense into one word, stamped on a cover page. Restructuring, and the word never once asks permission. Notice the paper before you. Notice the person holding it. The paper already made its decision. He hears the word before he reads it. Head count. 11 years of showing up rebranded into a line item on a spreadsheet. Nobody will scroll past twice. His hands do not shake. They just forget, for 3 full seconds, how to hold a coffee cup steady. Whatever they call you on the way out was never the whole truth of what you built. That part stays yours. Severance, $58,000 flat, no negotiation. Mortgage due the first, $2,140 a month, whether he's employed or not. His daughter's tuition invoice sits open on the kitchen counter, $6,300 past due. Numbers do not care about intentions. A budget only asks what's left, not what you meant to become. Write the real number down before panic. Writes a digger. One for you. The folder rides shotgun, the whole 14-mile drive home. He rehearses 3 different ways to say it and throws out all 3 at the same red light. Radio off. Hands at 10 and 2, like a man taking a driving test at 37. Practice the sentence before you owe it to someone else. Say it once, alone, so the second on time it doesn't break you. 3A. M. A smaller apartment, boxes still taped shut from the move. A water-stained paperback surfaces from underneath old tax returns. Meditations, spine cracked, not his handwriting inside it. He doesn't remember packing it. Some books wait in a box for 11 years, for the exact night you're finally quiet enough to need them. That timing is never an accident. He's not a professor. He's not a life coach with a ring light. Eli Marrow spent 11 years believing a piece of paper meant what it said, then found out it didn't at 9:14 on a Tuesday. What he's got isn't a theory, it's the exact scar tissue from signing what he never read, and he's done handing you a lecture instead of a warning. Epictetus was born property, owned outright by a man named Epictetus, who broke his leg once just to see if he'd flinch. He didn't. 2,000 years later, that same slave's voice is the sharpest one in the room whenever someone tries to sell you a contract as if it were a favor. Notice the dressing before you sign it. A favor never comes with a deadline attached. Epictetus wrote it plainly. A tyrant can chain the leg. He cannot chain the will. That part stays out of reach whatever door he locks. Eli underlines the line twice, at midnight, in a cheap apartment. Epictetus had 0 vote in his own captivity. The modern worker gets handed, ballots rigged, to have exactly one correct answer. And calling it a choice doesn't make it one. November 16, 2020. A company already cut in half, down to roughly 3,000 people, opens its inboxes to a single email. Subject line, a fork in the road. No meeting, no warning shot before it. The first line demands employees commit to being extremely hardcore, long hours at high intensity. Read the memo twice before deciding what it's actually asking of your body. extremely hardcore. Long hours, high intensity. The memo never once says a number, so Eli does the math himself. Standard week, 40 hours. Hardcore week, by every account gathered after, somewhere past 80, sustained, no ceiling mentioned. Vague words are how a company asks for double the hours without ever writing double, where a Cloyer or a Cunian could read it. 5 p.m. Thursday. That's the entire window. One email, one deadline, no follow-up call to ask questions. 17 hours to decide a career built over 9 years, most of them spent asleep or driving to work. A clock this tight isn't a scheduling choice. It's a pressure valve built to shut off the part of the brain that would normally ask for times to think. Phones light up in group chats across 9 time zones at once. One reply lands in the thread. 3 words no one knows. A cursor hovers over "I am in." Thumb steady, jaw tight. Nothing about the moment feels voluntary. Watch your own hands the next time a deadline decides for you before your mind has finished catching up. Eli recognizes the shape of it immediately. Same clock, different letterhead. His own folder had no deadline printed on the cover, just a tone in the room that made 4047 feel like a hard stop. The company changes, the mechanism doesn't. What arrives dressed as urgency is almost always a test of how fast you'll agree to something you haven't actually read. What happens next to the ones who typed yes doesn't show up in any press release. It surfaces later, in a second round of cuts nobody saw coming. Keep that in mind through the next stretch, because the ones who thought they'd bought safety end up telling the strangest version of this story. Notice who tells you it's over. The calendar usually disagrees first. Seneca tutored an emperor for 8 years, then got a letter ordering him to open his own veins. Nero didn't ask, he informed. Seneca chose the manner of his own end because manner was the only variable Nero left on the table. And even that concession came late and begrudged. Call that dignity if you want. Call it the last inch of ground a man could still hold. Seneca's choice was never a choice. The outcome was fixed before the letter arrived. Only the method stayed open. Compare that to a worker clicking yes on a deadline built by someone else's calendar. The button feels like agency because a button is easy to press. Pressing it doesn't mean the Tessage were ever up for negotiation. Ask what's fixed before celebrating the part that feels like choosing. Loyalty to Nero didn't buy safety either. Senators who stayed close, who said yes to every demand, still ended up exiled or dead within 4 years. Proximity to power looks like protection right up until the moment it isn't. History keeps handing us the same lesson in different costumes. Staying close to the fire was never the same as staying warm. Employees who signed the hardcore pledge still surfaced in a second layoff, round 11 weeks later. Public commitment brought no lasting protection, same as it never did in Rome. Whatever badge of loyalty you wear on the way in doesn't get consulted on the way out. Plan your decisions around that fact. Loyalty is a word companies use on the way in, not the way out. Game theory has a name for this setup, a take-it-or-leave-it offer with a hard deadline and one exit. Economists call it an ultimatum game, and the whole design depends on removing the second player's ability to negotiate anything. Recognizing the structure doesn't cancel the squeeze it produces, but it does stop you from mistaking the cage for a fair conversation. Eli's own cascade played out in exact, unglamorous line items. An apartment 10 minutes farther from downtown. A birthday party moved to a cheaper venue. A marriage that didn't survive the 6 months after. None of it happened all at once. It arrived on a drip, the way water damage shows up on a ceiling long after the pipe actually broke. Track the drip, not the clud. The cursor blinks over "I am in" for 6 full seconds, unclicked. Outside the window, a delivery truck idles, exhaust curling past the glass. Nobody in the room moves to answer for him. 6 seconds is nothing on a clock and everything to a nervous system deciding whether loyalty is worth more than rent. Notice what your body decides before your mind finishes the sentence. The body votes first. By the end of the hour, the group chat count reaches 200 replies, most of them one word long, in. Nobody asks what in actually costs until the invoice arrives disguised as a compliment. Your commitment. No villain's speech is needed to build this kind of pressure, a deadline, and a group chat. Do the entire old job without anyone raising their ove voice. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire that stretched across 3 continents and still wrote to himself at midnight questioning decisions nobody else would dare question. Meditations was never meant for an audience. It was a man auditing his own conduct with no one grading the exam. Compare that kind of scrutiny to a company issuing an ultimatum with 0 midnight doubt on records. No letter surfaces from the CEO wrestling with the decision at 3 a.m. No private journal entry gets leaked, showing hesitation before the email goes out to 3,700 inboxes. Whatever internal debate happened, if it happened, stayed exactly that, internal. Judge the decision by what's visible, not by what you hope was happening behind a closed door. That's not an accusation. It's what the record shows, or doesn't. The employees who stayed hardcore logged specific numbers afterward. 87-hour weeks, sleeping at the office 3 nights running, a man's blood pressure spiking high enough for urgent care. None of that made the highlight reel of high intensity. A body keeps its own ledger, no matter what the email called the arrangements. Track what your own body logs before you trust what a memo claims. One account, gathered from several former employees and compressed here without naming names, 6 weeks of hardcore, then a layoff notice anyway, delivered by the same recruiter who'd praised his commitment in writing. The praise and the pink slip came from the same inbox, 43 days apart. Read commitment language as a receipts, not promises. Receipts don't guarantee anything past the transaction. Eli doesn't say this with satisfaction. There's no scoreboard where he wins by being right about the outcome. The ones who stayed thought proving loyalty would buy them a different ending. The math didn't care what they proved. Winning an argument about coercion doesn't refund a single lost paycheck. It only changes what you carry into the next one. What the doctrine actually offers doesn't arrive until the next stretch, not comfort, something closer to a toolkit for reading contracts before signing them. Marcus had it. Epictetus had it. Eli found his own version of it in a cardboard box at 3A. Me? Hold on to that thought through the next several scenes. The C payoffs is coming, not a T platitude. That's where this chapter of the wound closes, the mechanism named, the cost counted in dollars and hours and 1 broken night's sleep. What comes next isn't more noise. Noise was never going to fix a signature already on file. The next stretch turns the microscope around onto the actual text, the ancients left behind for exactly this kind of mourning. Reread the email like a forensic document, not a headline. Extremely hardcore appears in the second paragraph before any mention of severance terms. Order reveals priority. Commitment gets asked for first, options get buried after. Read documents in the order they're written, not the order that's most comfortable, and the real ask usually shows up before the disclaimer. That order is never an accident. Strip the branding and the trick is ancient. Comply by a deadline or lose access to something you need. Debt collectors use it. Cults use it. Corporate memos use it with better fonts and a signature block. Recognizing the pattern doesn't diffuse the pressure in the moment, but it does stop the dressing gears from working on you a second time. Break down the formula plainly. Scarcity plus deadline plus ambiguity equals compliance. Scarcity says there's only one door. Deadline says the door shuts fast. Ambiguity keeps you guessing what's actually behind it. Every hostage negotiator studies this exact combination. Because the formula works, whether it's aimed at a building or an inbox. Name all three parts out loud, and the formula loses half its grip. Negotiation theory has a term for an offer with zero room to counter, a take-it-or-leave-it proposal, engineered to remove the other side's leverage entirely. A real negotiation has two parties adjusting terms. This only has one party writing them. Call it what negotiators call it. Not an offer, a demand wearing an offer's clothes. Naming a demand correctly is the first act of reclaiming the conversation. Epictetus opens with a single distinction. Some things are up to us, others are not. He puts opinion, effort, and desire on one side of the line, reputation, other people's decisions, and outcomes on the other. A deadline sits firmly on the far side of that line. The response to it sits on the near one, always. Eli draws the line for his own folder. Years later, the folder's timing was never his. His response to it was always his, from the first breath after reading it. That distinction didn't pay his mortgage that month. It did decide whether he spent the next 6 months drowning or building something. The deadline was theirs. The next move was his. None of this erases the mortgage, the invoice, or the marriage that didn't survive the aftermath. The reframe was never sold as painkiller. It was sold as aim, a way to spend the same weight on something that builds instead of something that just burns. Comfort was never the sea promise her. Direction was. Direction doesn't need your comfort to keep working. Hold that distinction loosely for now. The paycheck has something to value without needing to worship. What that actually looks like in practice, hour by hour, doesn't arrive until later in this account first. The doctrine needs testing against a harder question. What happens when it gets misused by the very people cashing this paycheck out of you? That test comes next. Epictetus described a jailer who holds a man's leg in chains but never touches his will. The body restrained, the mind still sovereign. Trade the jailer for a manager holding a badge instead of a leg. The badge controls the building, the elevator, the parking garage. It was never built to control the part of you that decides what any of that actually means, or what you do next. Eli remembers his own badge deactivation like a small, specific ceremony, a single beep at the turnstile, a security guard's practiced apology, the walk to his car past people who wouldn't meet his eyes. It took 11 seconds, start to finish. What a badge grants was never the same thing as what a person is worth for. The turnstile only ever measured access. The illusion sold in the ultimatum was a choice between hardcore and severance. Both options were drafted weeks before a single employee opened the email. The outcome pool was fixed. Only the label on your exit changed. See the menus for what it is before you order from it like it's a real negotiation. It never was one, not once. Seneca's letters return again and again to a single theme. Rank, house, title, all borrowed, none owned outright, whether you're on the Senate floor or 11 floors up in a glass tower. Losing a title stings the same way losing a rented apartment stings. The sting is real. The ownership was always temporary. Grieve what's gone. Just grieve the right thing. Eli lost operations manager. The same week he lost the office key fob and the reserved parking spot near the door. None of those were ever him. They were furniture the company owned and occasionally let him use. What actually walked out the building that day was the same man who walked in 11 years earlier, just with a different understanding of what had been borrowed. His index finger rests on the laptop's power button. Doesn't press yet. The cursor on screen still blinks in an empty email draft addressed to no one. 3 seconds pass. 4. On the 5th second, the screen goes dark on its own. Battery, not decision. Some endings quates their own timing whether you're ready or not. Not every ending needs your permission to arrive. Taped inside the laptop lid, worn soft at the corners, his daughter's drawing of the three of them holding hands outside a house that doesn't look like either apartment they've lived in since. She drew it 2 years before any of this happened. He doesn't take it down. Some things you carry precisely because they don't ask anything of you in return. That distinction, what's owned versus what's borrowed, closes this stretch of the account. It didn't fix the marriage. It didn't refund the parking spot or the title on the door. What it did was give Eli somewhere to stand while the rest of it got sorted out, which on some mornings was the entire difference between drowning and treading. Seneca wrote to his own mother from exile on Corsica, broke, stripped of rank, refusing to perform grief for her benefit or anyone else's. He names what's gone plainly, then names what's still standing. His mind, his habits, the discipline nobody can confiscate. Grounded in the actual text, not the greeting card version, Dignity X, doesn't require an audience who to hold its shape. A severance check exists for a specific, unglamorous reason. It buys time and it buys quiet, not forgiveness and not dignity. Companies calculate the exact number that keeps a former employee from making noise in public. Nothing more generous than that math requires. Read the check for what it funds. A few months, not an apology. Spend it like the runway it is, not like a verdict. Eli's own number was $41,600 after tax, deposited in one lump 9 days after he signed. Divided by his actual monthly costs, that bought him 7 months and change before the account hit zero. He built a spreadsheet the same week, the same instinct that makes a soldier count ammunition, know your runway, before you decide anything else. Numbers don't panic. Let them do some of the deciding. Neither path out of that email was actually safe. Not the one who clicked yes and burned out by spring. Not the one who took severance and spent 7 months job hunting in a cooling market. Both were bets, dressed up as decisions. Once you see a bet for what it is, you stop demanding it behave like a H guarantee and start managing it like the risk it always was. Economists have a term for staying somewhere purely because of what you've already invested, the sunk cost fallacy, a well-documented bias that costs people money, time, and options they can't get back. 11 years at one company isn't a reason to stay in a burning building. It's just a number, and numbers don't obligate anyone to anything. Spend loyalty forward, not backward. Everything laid out so far holds up under pressure until you watch the doctrine get worn as a costume by people who never once tested it against a real deadline. That corruption is the next stretch of this account, and it gets ugly fast, because the misuse hides in plain sight, usually wearing a blazer and calling itself discipline. That's the doctrine, dissected honestly, not a bumper sticker, not a mood, a working method for separating what's yours from what never was. Hold it carefully. The next stretch shows exactly what happens when other people get their hands on the same words and sell them back to you as a C product. Watch closely who's cashing in on your own vocabulary. Somewhere between the ancient text and a LinkedIn post, discipline got rebranded into an excuse for unpaid overtime. The hustle culture version borrows the vocabulary, resilience, grit, the daily grind, while dropping the part about knowing what's actually worth your effort. Same words, opposite function. One builds a person, the other extracts the shifts. Ask which one the paycheck is actually funding. Call it extremely hardcore, and the extraction sounds like character. Call it 87 unpaid hours in a single week, and the same arrangement sounds like exactly what it is. Language does the heavy lifting in both directions. Dressing exploitation as virtue, or stripping virtue's borrowed clothes right back off it. Check the hours, not the slogan, every single time. Even the modern popularizers admit the risk of their own success, turn philosophy into a productivity hack, and you strip out the warning label about externals. Keep only the part that sells planners and cold plunges. That's a fair critique of the commercial version, made honestly, not as an attack on the whole tradition. Sell the method. Just don't sell the pawnings along with it. Eli has zero patience for a Stoicism quote posted from a beach chair by someone who's never once had a folder slide across a table toward them. The quote isn't wrong necessarily, the context is dishonest, borrowed weight from a life the poster never actually lived through. Test any quote against a real Tuesday before you trust it. Context decides whether wisdom or decorations. Search the actual source material and you won't find the word grind anywhere near the word virtue. Marcus wrote about duty, restraint, tranquility under pressure, not about optimizing a calendar for maximum output. The gap between the source text and the modern slogan is the entire S scam, and it's a gap most people never bother to check. Check the primary source before you buy the S berets. Neuroscience has a name for what hustle, content actually sells. A dopamine loop, the same reward circuitry a slot machine uses, dressed up in ancient robes for credibility. Virtue repackaged into a KPI stops functioning as virtue the moment someone profits from you chasing it. Ask who gets paid when you flinch at the idea of resting her. Rest is not a moral failure. It never was one. Name who actually profits when a worker internalizes hardcore as identity instead of recognizing it as a directive from someone else's spreadsheet, not the worker, almost never the worker. The math flows upward, same as it did in Rome, same as it does now. Follow the money before you follow the slogan. It tells you who wrote it and why. That's the costume identified, thread by thread, where it borrows real wisdom, where it drops the parts that don't sell. Next comes something harder to watch. A version of this exact framework that got used correctly, sincerely, and still didn't save the person using it. That story doesn't flatter the doctrine. It's included anyway because a doctrine that can't survive its own failures isn't worth teaching. Not every worker who went extremely hardcore got a happy ending, and this account owes you that version too. One composite case, drawn from several accounts and stripped of identifying details, full commitment, 0 complaints filed, still let go 5 months later in a routine efficiency review. Endurance alone was never the promises. It was only ever the entry fee. His actual hours, logged in a since-deleted internal tracker, 91 in the worst week, averaging 74 across the 5 months before the notice. Sleep dropped under 5 hours a night for long stretches. None of it bought immunity, and none of it made the eventual meeting go any differently. Endurance without a clear aim, just spins you faster toward the same door. Here's the harder truth, the one the doctrine doesn't get to skip. Seneca, who wrote pages on the contempt of wealth, was accused in his own lifetime of amassing 300 million sesterces in 4 years through lending at brutal interest rates. The record doesn't resolve that tension, it just sits there, unflattering and grim. Wisdom from a flawed messenger is still worth testing on its own terms. That contradiction doesn't cancel the value of know what you actually possess. As an idea, it complicates who gets to say it with a straight face. Eli holds both facts at once without picking a side. The writing is sound, the writer was compromised, and both of those things are true on the same page. Hold complexity like that without needing it resolved. The composite worker used the doctrine the way you'd use a painkiller before surgery. You never actually scheduled, numbing the symptom, ignoring the diagnosis. He recited resilience daily and never once asked why the demand kept climbing. A framework built to sharpen judgment doesn't work if you only ever use it to tolerate more of what's already breaking you. Ask what's actually breaking before you medicate the pain of it. Eli caught himself doing the same thing after the divorce papers were filed, 70-hour weeks at a job that no longer needed the extra hours, using exhaustion as a way to skip the harder math of what he'd actually lost. Nobody stopped him. He stopped himself, eventually on a Sunday, staring at an inbox that had nothing left to prove. The composite worker's desk, photographed with the exit inventory, a coffee mug half full, gone cold, a sticky note reading "Call back Thursday" in handwriting that will never finish the task. Nobody moved the mug for 6 days. Some frozen scenes don't need commentary. The stillness itself is the entire report. Look at what's left behind before you look away. That's the counterexample held without flinching from it. The doctrine practiced sincerely, and it still wasn't enough on its own, because endurance was never the whole toolkit. What comes next asks a harder question about who else gets left standing when everyone around them agrees to disappear quietly into the hierarchy they were told didn't exist. Watch closely who benefits from that particular silence. Set two real Stoics side by side, and the contradiction writes itself. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, commander of legions, author of the private notebook that became Meditations, and Epictetus, born enslaved, owned by another man for decades before earning his freedom. Both taught the same inner discipline. Neither one dismantled the actual power structure they lived inside. They just learned to operate within it. Modern companies borrow the same trick: flat culture, open floor plans, first names for everyone, including the founder, language built entirely around the appearance of equality. Strip the language away and the actual chain of command is exactly as steep as it ever was. Someone still writes the 5 p.m. deadline, and it was never voted on by the people receiving it. Read the company's own values, page next to the actual email. Words like transparency and respect. Sit one browser tab away from a 24-hour ultimatum with no room for questions. Nobody has to lie outright when the gap between stated values and actual behavior just quietly does the work for them. Compare the spage to the practice every single time. Thermodynamics has a principle worth borrowing here. Systems move toward the path of least resistance, always without malice, just physics. Coercion survives inside organizations for the same reason water finds the lowest point in a room. It's simply cheaper than negotiation, and cheap wins by default unless someone actively resists it. Be the resistance a system has to actually plan around. Eli still has a text saved from a former co-worker sent the week everything fell apart. You were the only one who checked on me and didn't need anything back. No reply was ever sent. Some kindness doesn't require a response to have mattered. It just needed to happen once, to the right person, at the right hour. Send the check in anyway. It costs you almost nothing. Eli doesn't let himself off the hook here either. 11 years, and he never once read the actual severance clause buried in his own onboarding packet, the one that would have told him exactly how this ends. Ignorance wasn't innocence, it was just easier at the time. Read your own contract before the day you actually need to. Nobody gets a second copy handed to them for free. That closes the corruption chapter, the costume, the counterexample, the hierarchy hiding behind flat language, and Eli's own blind spot included without exception. What's left is the actual practice. Not theory anymore, not critique anymore, just the specific moves a person makes with their hands and their calendar starting tomorrow morning. The next stretch hands you the tools directly. Seneca wrote it directly, not as a suggestion, but as training. Rehearse in your mind exile, torture, war, shipwreck, every loss conceivable, before it arrives uninvited at 9014 on an ordinary Tuesday. This isn't pessimism, it's a fire drill for a fire. Nobody schedules in advance. Rehearse the worst case on purpose, so it never gets to ambush you first. The exercise itself is unglamorous. Each morning, before checking a single notification, name the worst plausible outcome for the day out loud, in one plain sentence, no embellishment. I could lose the account today. I could get the call today. Naming it costs 10 seconds and removes most of its power to ambush. Rehearsed on purpose, it stops running the show. Eli practices it on what currently keeps him up, plainly, without softening it for the camera. I could lose this too. The apartment, the routine, the version of stable I've rebuilt. He says it once out loud alone in the kitchen. It doesn't fix anything by itself. It just makes the unspoken thing smaller than the silence around it used to be. The exercise doesn't summon disaster by naming it. Bad outcomes don't check a calendar for permission. What it actually does is remove the element of surprise, the part that turns a hard day into a full system shutdown. A rehearsed loss lands as information. An unrehearsed one lands as an earthquake. Rehearsal is how you buy yourself back 10 clear seconds. Military planners call this exact process wargaming, rehearsing the worst plausible scenario in detail, on purpose, before deployment, so panic never gets first access to the decision-making process. Soldiers who wargame outcomes make faster, cleaner calls under real pressure than the ones improvising for the first time in the moment. Rehearse the hit so it doesn't get to rehearse you. Set a real timer for this, not a mental note that evaporates by 10 AA. Missa, 5 minutes, same time each morning. Phone in another room so it can't interrupt itself. Write the worst case in 1 sentence. Write your actual next step in 1 more. 2 sentences, 5 minutes, and the whole day starts from steadier ground than panic would have given it. One of Eli's own entries, dated 11 weeks ago, redacted only where it names other people. Worst case, the new position folds too. Next step, update the resume tonight, not Sunday. 14 words total, written at 6,012 AM, before coffee. The entry didn't prevent anything. It just meant he wasn't starting from zero when the call actually came. Preparation doesn't stop the storm. It just moves your umbrella closer. That's the first tool, tested and functional. Name the worst case before it names itself to you first. The second tool works differently. It's not about the future at all. It's about sorting today's exact wreckage into what's yours to fix and what never was. Keep both tools close. You'll need each one at a different hour. Second exercise, done at night instead of morning, draw a line down a page, 2 columns. On the left, list everything that happened today that was never actually yours to command. A deadline, a diagnosis, someone else's decision, the weather. Nothing goes on that side unless it genuinely sat outside your hands the entire time. Be brutally honest about that list. Most of it belongs there. On the right column, list what response was actually his, the entire time, the tone he used, the calls he made, the hour he chose to finally sleep instead of scroll. That column is always shorter than the left one, and that's precisely the point. Small, but entirely ownedic, with nothing borrowed and nothing to defend. Small and owned beats large and borrowed every time it's counted. Run the exercise backward on the folder, day itself, years later, for practice. Left column gets the folder, the 31-year-old messenger, the entire timeline. The company chose without consulting him. Right column gets exactly 1 line. He drove home, told the truth eventually, and started reading things twice from then on. That 1 line still holds. 1 honest line can outlast an entire folder full of noise. None of this is about feeling less. It's about aiming what you've got at the part of the situation that actually moves. Energy spent arguing with a locked door is energy not spent finding the windows. Precision beats intensity almost every single time a real deadline is actually on the table. Find the window. Stop arguing with the door that's already sealed. On a bad Tuesday, months into the practice, Eli closes the laptop mid-scroll and calls his daughter instead. No agenda, no life lesson planned. They talk about a school project involving 3 different colors of poster board for 11 straight minutes. Nothing about the folder gets solved on that call. Something quieter does, and it doesn't need fixing egg. Not every good hour is meant to accomplish something on a list. Emergency medicine runs on a similar sorting logic. Triage, treating what can be treated right now, flagging what has to wait, and accepting what can't be fixed in this particular room at all. Nobody in that field calls triage cold or uncaring. They call it the only way to actually help anyone under real constraints. Apply the same sorting to your own week without apologizing for it. Some nights the columns don't balance. Certain losses don't sort into yours, and not yours, no matter how straight the line down the page is drawn. That's allowed. The exercise is a tool, not a law of physics. Some nights you just sit with the mess, and that counts as practice too. Sitting with it without fixing it is still doing the work. That's the nightly sort, imperfect and still worth doing, what's yours, what isn't, and the honest leftover that doesn't fit either column some nights. It doesn't produce peace on schedule. It produces something closer to traction, enough grip to take the next step, which most days is the only step that actually matters. Traction beats peace on the days. Peace isn't actually available. Marcus Aurelius kept a private notebook that eventually became Meditations, written for an audience of exactly one, himself, exhausted, at the end of long campaigns, correcting his own conduct with nobody grading the pages. He wasn't performing wisdom for Rome. He was doing maintenance on his own mind, the same way you check an engine before another long drive. Maintenance isn't done for an audience, it's just done. Borrow the format directly, scaled down to fit an actual evening, 3 lines every night, no more. Line 1, what tested you today? Line 2, how you actually answered it, honestly. Line 3, what you do differently next, time, if there is one. 3 lines costs less than 4 minutes and outlasts most New Year's resolutions. Most habits fail from complexity. This one survives because it's small. 1 entry, unedited, from the week of the folder. What tested me? Being handed my own irrelevance in a manila folder. How I answered, badly, in the car, then better by the time I got home. What I'd change? Nothing about the tears. Everything about how long I waited to read the fine prints. That's the whole entry. Nothing dressed up, nothing left out. Some nights the entry produces nothing that resembles calm. Just an honest record of a day poorly survived, written down anyway because the habit doesn't ask permission to feel productive. Peace was never guaranteed by the exercise. Consistency was the only actual promise it ever made, and consistency showed up even on the nights peace didn't. Show up anyway. That's the entire discipline most nights. Pilots run a debrief after every flight, good or bad, reviewing the exact decisions made without assigning blame or handing out medals. Just an honest account of what happened and what to adjust. No pilot skips the debrief because the flight landed fine. Review your own landings the same way, especially the ones that felt uneventful. The quiet flights teach you almost as much as the rough ones. Eli draws one more line, sharper than the others. Forgiving yourself for a bad call is not the same as excusing the call, so you never have to examine it again. Forgiveness looks backward with honesty intact. Excuse looks away entirely. Use the S first one nightly. Refuse the S first one completely, no matter how tired you are. The difference between the two decides who you become by winter. That's the full toolkit, handed over plainly. Rehearse the worst case. Sort the day into what's yours. Keep the nightly record honest. None of it is decoration. All of it gets used on ordinary Tuesdays by ordinary people who never expected to need it until the folder actually showed up on the table. What's left now is the ending, and how a person actually closes this. Return now to that boardroom from the very beginning. The one with the empty floor and the blinking cursor. The folder in that room held the same 3 words every ultimatum holds. Comply or leave. No hidden fourth option existed, then or now, dressed as generosity. Naming the trick doesn't undo it. It just means you never mistake it for kindness again. Call it what it actually was, one final time, without softening it for anyone. Not a fork in the road. A door with the key already turned before the email ever arrived. Every choice. Inside it was cosmetic, dressed up to feel like agency for people who needed to feel something other than cornered. See the lock clearly. That's the entire point of showing up here. Eli says the plain version once more, without dressing it up for sympathy, 11 years, and he never read his own onboarding packet closely enough to know how the ending would actually work. That's not a confession meant to earn pity. It's just the fact that started this entire account, stated one final time in daylight. Read your own paperwork today. Start there before anything else. The drawing that lived, taped inside a laptop lid, now hangs framed on the wall of the smaller apartment, at eye level, by the door he walks through every morning. The three stick figures still hold hands outside a house that never existed. Some things get promoted, not because they solved anything, but because they never once asked to be paid back. The ones who clicked yes, and the ones who took severance, ended up in the same place more or less 2 years out, still standing differently shaped by the decision. Neither one owed an apology by the other for the choice they made under a gun. Compare outcome SAC, not choice SAC, made blind before judging anyone's decision that Thursday. Nobody in that group chat owes anybody else an explanation now. Look back across the entire account, and one thing was never actually on the table, no matter which box got checked that Thursday, how a person carried themselves through it. The company controlled the deadline, the severance, the headline. It never once controlled the posture. A person chose to keep, and that was always the real asset. That asset never shows up on a severance letter. Every Tuesday now at 9014 A.M. Exactly, Eli stops whatever he's doing for 60 seconds. No phone, no task, just standing still on purpose in the exact minute that once took something from him. It's not a superstition. It's a claim, staked back on a specific piece of time that used to only belong to what happened to him. Somewhere in the actual pages of Meditations, an emperor writes to himself about rising each morning even when the body resists it, because the work of being a decent person doesn't pause for exhaustion. He wasn't performing strength for an audience of legions. He was talking himself into one more ordinary morning, the same as anyone reading this at 3 a.m. tonight. Whoever you are, watching this at whatever hour brought you here, nobody's offering comfort as a finished product, wrapped and guaranteed to fix the specific folder sitting on your own table right now. What's actually being offered is company. The plain fact that someone else read the fine print late, too, and is still standing, still reading, one Tuesday at a time. One last image, held without narration, an apartment kitchen at 9004 on an ordinary morning, coffee steaming, a framed drawing on the wall, no folder anywhere in sight. Nothing moves for 6 full seconds. No music underneath it. Just a room that survived, holding still long enough for someone to actually notice. Notice your own room the same way, before it needs surviving. One line, and only one, before the final word, the next folder that slides across a table, doesn't get signed inside 24 hours. Not by Eli, not by anyone who's read this far. That's not defiance for its own sake. It's the one boundary earned the hard way, and it doesn't move for a deadline someone else wrote. Draw your own line before the next folder arrives, not after. So here's the one move. Not a list, not a checklist, just the first real one, before this day ends. Read one document you've been avoiding. A contract, a lease, a severance clause. Whatever's been sitting unopened in a drawer. Read it fully, on purpose, while you still have time to choose your own answer instead of someone else's deadline. Comment, I read the fine print once you have.